If everybody kind of gather right in here for a minute, let me give you some information, and then you can walk around and take some pictures if you want to. This was the property of the original Drake family that settled in Henderson County in the early 1800s, pre-Civil War. We're talking somewhere, Bob, isn't it, like between 1810 and 1820 they came in. Now, the ancestor of all the Drakes in Henderson, there were two brothers, weren't they?
I'm not sure of the history when it gets beyond the couple
sorry,
of days.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I remember, because I didn't write it all down. I believe there were two brothers that came in between 1810 and 1820, but they all settled right in here in the Clear Creek community. This was actually their property. Too bad Pam and Pat aren't here. But this was actually the original property of the Drake family. They had quite a few slaves. And this was
from Charleston.
Huh?
Are these Drakes from Charleston?
No. I haven't traced them into Charleston at all. They're just like all our other pioneer settlers from somewhere around here in North Carolina, of Rowan County or somewhere like that. I'd have to go back and look, but I have traced them back. But they came in here and settled, and all of them had a bunch of slaves. What happened is, when we did Crab Creek, for those of you who are at Crab Creek, one of their descendants ended up moving out to Crab Creek right before the Civil War. So we have a lot of Drakes out in that Crab Creek, Pleasant Hill section. But that was maybe 10, 15, 20 years before the Civil War. Those were children of those original settlers. One of the daughters, Mary Drake, married Philip Seagle. Philip Seagle was from Rutherford County. The Seagle family was from Rutherford. And after the Civil War, Philip Seagle and Mary Drake married. Mary Drake ended up with this property. We all together? Mm-hmm. So this then became known as Seagle because she had the last name of Seagle. And that's where people get confused. It was originally Drake property. Mary Drake married a Seagle. The Seagle family were Episcopalian. The Drake family are Baptist.
Oh dear.
But the Seagles tend to go into the priesthood and the ministry. So what happened, several of their sons did that. They had 8 children. And 2 of their sons, John and Nathan, built this family chapel. They were priests, some of them in New York City and all over the Southeast and other places. But they would come here during the summers, sometimes on vacations when they would come home for a week, 2 weeks, or the whole summer, and they would stay here. So they built their own private family chapel. This chapel, because John and Nathan built it, and I had to go back and trace their birth dates, so I'm estimating construction beginning sometime in the 1890s. I thought it was here by the early 1900s. No?
The reason I know this is because I'm writing a history.
Right. Okay.
But I have done that research.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure about that, because John and Nathan built it.
Yeah.
And I was looking at their birth dates, trying to estimate when that was. End of their lives. That explains that.
They have both actually.
Okay. That's why they built it. They had retired. It's a beautiful rock family chapel. Now, recently, after 2000, what's the year that they gave it to the diocese?
It was consecrated in 1957, and that was the year that Nathan died.
Okay.
So, and it still wasn't finished. It was then. The Episcopal diocese sort of went back and forth about what to do with it. They tried to give it to the Episcopal diocese at one point. And then the Lutherans, who now have a church across the street, were looking for a church. And they leased it for 20 years. From the 1960s through the 1980s. The Lutherans leased it and held services here for 20 years. And they completed their own church. And now it's gone back to the Episcopal. So Mary Kent Drake, who was a descendant, who inherited the actual property. This chapel actually still belongs to the Drake family. It's in the chapel itself. The land around it belongs to the diocese, but the chapel itself still belongs to the Drake family. Or to the Seagle family. I'm sorry.
Seagle family.
To the Seagle family. And they have leased it, the chapel, to the diocese for 99 years, and it's now in Spanish.
Yeah, I know it's affiliated with St. James, and they're using it for the Hispanic Episcopal Church here. That's why you see the Hispanic name as you drive in. Now, over there in that cemetery are Drake graves and Seagle graves. That's the family cemetery. So any of you that are Drake descendants or anything like that, you may want to go over there and look. And I don't have their birth and death dates. I got it at home, and I'm writing stories, and I will have them on the website the next week or two. And who the people are and when they arrived and so forth, if you want to look at the cemetery. Now, I've lost my bearings because I can't find the old farmhouse.
The original farmhouse doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, it was here in 2004 or 5. There was an old white farmhouse.
Well, some of the descendants live in this house right here.
That's not the one I'm thinking of.
No. According to this descendant, the old farmhouse it has been torn down. And there are descendants living
In the new one.
The Nealons are living in this house over here. So the Seagulls still live here. And there's a house back here that belonged to Mary Kemp's Seagull, who later married.
Is it a 2-story white farmhouse?
No.
Okay, the 2-story white farmhouse that I saw in 2004 when I did the cemetery series was sort of over there where that new one is, except further behind it.
Yeah.
And to the left of it, well, if I'm facing it, if I was facing that old 2-story white house, to the left of it there's a bank. And on that bank, which is kind of the back side of that retirement center up there, are slave graves.
I didn't know that.
And we surveyed those slave graves. And that is called, I can't remember if it's called the Drake or Seagle Slave Cemetery, on the Henderson County Cemetery Board, on the GIS map, and with the Planning and Zoning Department. Now we know that those slave graves are over there. And when I wrote the story, I think it's Andrew, and I could have, he was the priest at that huge cathedral in New York City in 2004.
That would have been
Nathan emailed me all the way from New York City and said, we know that slave cemetery is there, and we consider it sacred ground. Now, they were aware that it's over there. Those were the Drake slaves that were buried over there prior to the Civil War. And it's considered only one of 2 slave cemeteries that we actually identified and found old field stones and actually identified the site. So we're saying we only have 2 intact slave cemeteries in Henderson County. They're not really intact, but they're both on this tour. And that's one of them right over there. We can't go to it because now I've lost my bearings and can't find it because the old 2-story white farmhouse is gone and I can't figure out where I'm at anymore.
Well, I don't know for sure that the house is torn down, but I have been told that.
Okay.
And so I think it's in the vicinity of where the Nealon house is.
Well, it was kind of, I had in that new one, it was sort of behind it, and it's kind of on that back bank that comes down from that retirement center.
I'll have to do more research.
We've got it marked on the GIS, Henderson County GIS, Geographic Information System. So if you want to go look at the cemetery, if you want to take pictures of the church, and then we'll head on out, and we're going to have a stop at Ebenezer.
Yeah, there's a guy. Well,
Yeah, but this is the older one.
yeah.
All the documents being around here
Well, I'd had to be a descendant because, connector because of the name.
as lunch, you know.